Yes?
Great and eminent scholar from Iraq, Shah ibn Mansur. He pronounced the declaration of Anal Haq. Was he justified in his pronouncement?
Well, it depends in what sense he said that. He was a great Sufi, and he was a very pious man. All his life he had lived a life of piety, and he never claimed to be God in true sense in reality. So Anal Haq may metaphorically means a different thing. So because it can be interpreted in a manner that is not against a claim against the unity of God, not a claim to be God himself, but it may mean that I have totally disappeared in my God. And this concept is a mystic concept which should not be condemned at all. Some people are entirely devoted to God, dedicated to God, and they lose their identity in fact. And there are special types of people who become such mystics. So in my opinion, for the ulama of the time to condemn him to death and to crucify him was a wrong act, even if somebody claimed to be a god himself. No other person had a right to kill him. Nowhere in the Holy Quran do you come across such an injunction. So as far as the punishment meted out to him is concerned, that is totally un-Islamic. It has no foundation in the Holy Quran or the tradition of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But as far as the reality is concerned, I am inclined to believe that he was a pious man, and he claimed that only in a metaphorical sense, not metaphorical in a sense of extreme love. There are other pious people also who have said certain things which in ordinary terms would be considered blasphemy. But knowing their history, their life, their devotion to the Holy Prophet of Islam and things, it is impossible to give an edict against them in any way, yet the claim made by them appears to be very obnoxious. There is one verse of such a mystic poet which says, Panje dar panje khuda dar, manche parwaye Mustafa dar. My hand is in the hand of God, firmly rooted. What care I have for Mustafa? Now, he was a great lover of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was dedicated to him. He followed the Sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He got all his faith from Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, if such a person claims, you can't imagine him to have gone suddenly, mad or turned against his master. You must attribute certain other meaning to it. So whether you are able to do that or not, but that person must have said it in some other sense.
He was cut off in different pieces, and each limb of his body was jumping in the air and...
no, that is wrong. That is all myth.
Have I ever heard
no, that is all myth. No, it's wrong.
God.
These are stories woven again around such heroes, and this is human nature. You shouldn't go by that. Don't take it too seriously. Yes, please. So you are leaving tomorrow at last, eh?
Assalamu alaikum. Could I should introduce somehow myself?
Of course you should. Everybody is expecting you to introduce yourself.
Okay.
Yes.
My name is Ali Said Mosa. Yes. I'm a Tanzanian.
Mm-hmm.
I've been here for about 2.5 years. I was studying in the University of Wales. Now my question is this one.
No, you have not completely introduced yourself. The rest, the second half I will do. Ever since he came there, he was very closely connected with the mosque and the Ahmadiyyat and indulged in the preaching activities and established a very good example. Then when the time of his thesis approached near, then he wrote to me and asked my permission to remain quiet for a while and devote my time entirely to the studies, which I permitted. In the meantime, he had already gained some inroads into various people's minds and hearts, and both African and the local Britishers were influenced by him, and he distributed cassettes to them and books, and so he was the center of Ahmadiyya preaching in that region. Is that right or not?
It's right.
So why did you? That was the true introduction I wanted you to make, but naturally you were too humble to say that yourself.
That's right. Anyway, my question is this one, that we Ahmadis are the champions of Islam, and we all know that Arabic is the official language in Islam. Now I was wondering whether it's not the time.
What do you mean by official language? What do you mean by official language?
Well, by that I mean the Holy Quran.
Arabic is the language of the Quran.
The Quran.
And our Holy Prophet. Yes.
That's right. Yes. So I was imagining that could be a time has come.
Yes.
When, I was wondering whether the time did not come whereby the Jamaat could be encouraging us to use Arabic in various business.
I think the time may come, ultimately it will come perhaps, but I don't see the possibility in near future, because this is the age where English is spreading much faster and wider than the Arabic. And also Urdu has been exported to all countries of the world, and this is also demanding its share. So with this practical competition, I doubt if Arabic would get its due very soon. Once Islam has conquered the entire world, then I am quite certain, inshallah, it would one day become the world language. But left as it is, left to the normal factors which are responsible for giving popularity to a language, left to them naturally, I don't see in near future any possibility of what you're dreaming of. But I like this idea, because Masih Maud has laid a very great stress on this, and he told us that Arabic was not only the first language of the world, it was a language revealed by God. Man did not learn by himself how to read and write and to speak, in fact. And it was Allamahul Bayan, the Holy Quran tells us, that to speak was taught to man by God. And because he chose Arabic for the final and the consummate revelation of his word, so from that as well as from the quality of the language, Hazrat Masih Maud inferred that this was the language which was first revealed to man. And then he proved from internal evidence that those languages which are oldest, they have a certain quality, and the philologists have laid down the rules by which you can decide which language is the oldest. So Hazrat Masih Maud established that these rules evidently apply to Arabic, and in fact it is beyond every other language in this regard, because for instance Sanskrit, which is supposed to be the oldest language, was once supposed to be. Max Muller and such scholars, Western scholars, propounded this idea in the beginning, and later on they also revised this idea. This language, Sanskrit, was proved to be a much recent language as compared to Arabic by Hazrat Masih Maud Islam. And recent philology and philological study and analysis of this language shows it to be very poor in vocabulary. Mostly the language is enlarged, like milkmen in Pakistan unfortunately enlarge the quantity of their milk by adding water, So this language is enlarged by adulteration, by adding a few words and changing their position and syntax and pretext, all these things go into enlarging the true real matter of Sanskrit out of all proportion to its real size. If you collapse it to its roots, then the language would be reduced to a few hundred words or maybe 1,000 words, that's all. So how could it be the oldest? Well, Arabic roots run into how many thousands? 60,000 or more? About 60,000, I think more. So these are the roots. It takes long time for a thing to grow, and that languages grow. And it's impossible for a language to be recent and yet have grown so profusely. And for another language to be oldest and yet not grow at all. So these are the general rules plus some others which were applied by Hazrat Masih Maud Islam. And for the first time in the world, the attention was drawn to this fact that Arabic is not only the oldest but also the language which was revealed by Allah Himself. And on this so much has been done by Hazrat Sheikh Muhammad Ahmad Sahib of Faisalabad, Pakistan. Originally he belonged to Kabultala. He has already, I think, rendered about 40 plus languages back to Arabic. He has traced them back to Arabic. And through the principles laid down by Hazrat Masih Maud Islam, he methodically organized them and scientifically arranged them in an order, so that by applying one of the 12 rules which he had deducted from Hazrat Masih Maud Islam's book, Minul Rahman, he could solve English, Chinese, Korean, Japanese, all such languages, far and wide in between. Yet he has traced them back all to Arabic, its true source. So when this is the original language, this is the language chosen by God, so ultimately it has to be the world language. I mean, this is my reasoning. So you are quite right, and it's a very intelligent observation on your part. Thank you. Yes, Rashid Sahib. If you come early in the session, the rest will not be given any chance then.
I'll wait, sir.
Huh?
I'll wait.
So alright, you can ask a question or two, and later on if somebody has a word to say.
I'll ask small question if you like, that way. Instead of asking big ones.
With a long answer, you mean? Because you told me last time you have only two categories of questions. Small questions with big answers, big questions with small answers.
So in the Holy Quran, Allah Ta'ala has said, Wallahu ghaniyun wa antumul fuqara.
Yes.
Then in some other place, Allah Ta'ala has said, Fazkuruni azkurukum.
Azkurkum.
Azkurukum. So could you explain these two? Because Allah says that, why should Allah remember us?
Remember you?
Yeah. He says, Wallahu ghaniyun wa antumul fuqara.
So what is the big objection?
So they contradict this, I was thinking.
Where is the contradiction? First to explain that.
Wallahu ghaniyun. Could you kindly explain the meaning of this first? Then
what do you understand by this, first of all? Because without understanding it, you couldn't have considered it to be contradictory to anything else. What is your own understanding of this verse, and particularly the word Ghani?
This is what I want to explain.
No. This is not what you came here for. You came here to have some contradiction solved and resolved. And that contradiction has not yet been established by you. What appears to be contradictory to you? I mean, of course I know, you know there is no contradiction in the Holy Quran, but there are things which you have not understood correctly.
Yes, sir.
So you feel, according to your understanding, there is a contradiction. Is that not right?
It's true, yes.
So show me, where is that contradiction?
So Ghaniyan means he is almighty, all powerful.
No, Ghani does not mean that.
Rich and master of riches and riches.
Ghani also means this, but also means that who is not dependent on anybody else for anything. It does not require the help of anything in any way whatsoever. This is why rich people are called Ghani. They depend less on others' favors, because they can go to the market and buy anything. Even human beings are in the market nowadays. So this is why they are called Ghani. People come to them for favors and they don't have to go to others for favors, generally speaking. But in many other ways they are also dependent, so they are not true Ghani. I mean, they appear to be Ghani in some ways, but it's impossible for man to be truly Ghani, because in so many respects he has to depend on others' favors. He has to ask favors of others. If he falls ill, even if he pays money, still he goes under favor of the physician who treats him. And I mean, 100 and more than thousands of ways, I can't describe everyone, in which everyone needs in favor of others, remains in favor of others. Remains in the need of favors of others. Right? So truly this word can only apply to Allah, who owns everything and who does not require anybody's favor whatsoever. At another place he says, if I destroy Ibn Maryam and everything, who can ask me for, who can bring me to question, or who can raise any objection? So that is a way of expressing his total independence. Everything he has created. So this is Ghani. Now, understanding this correctly, what is the objection? Not objection, what is the question, I should say?
My request was, Allah Ta'ala, as He said, He is Ghani.
Yes.
Why should He remember us? We are
remember. What do you mean by remember us?
Waskuruni azkurukum.
Waskuruni azkurukum.
Waskuruni azkurukum.
Right, and now I follow what you mean. You mean to say that when He is Ghani, why should He ask us to remember Him? Is that what you want to know? No, or the other way around? Why He should remember us?
Yes.
Huh? You mean a Ghani shouldn't remember anybody else? Why? Why not?
So we are His creation, you see. It's up to us to remember Him. Master shouldn't remember his servant.
No. Is this how you treat your servants? What a poor treatment. You know, how Ghani comes into being. You have totally forgotten the first lesson which I gave you. A Ghani is a person who has everything. So if he doesn't remember others' favors, nobody would have anything whatsoever. The natural outcome of Ghani, the natural corollary of somebody's being Ghani is that everything should flow from him to others. So if he doesn't care for others in the ordinary sense of caring, then nobody would be left with anything whatsoever. Because he possesses everything, he is the master of everything, doesn't depend on anybody's favors, so then he shouldn't remember anybody. But out of his mercy, out of his grandeur, he bestows things to others, so he is ghani, everybody else is dependent on him, and he is not dependent on anybody else. I don't see comprehension in your eyes.
I'll rephrase the question next week. Let me think about it.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Yeah, it was not a fully prepared question.
Very
this
interesting.
Question is from Surah Araf.
Yes.
There is a verse number 175 to 77. I'll read the translation and could you kindly explain? And we relate to them the story of a person to whom we gave our son, but he stepped away from them. So Satan followed him up, and he became one of those who go astray. And if we had pleased, we would have exalted him thereby, but he inclined to the earth, and he followed his evil desires. His case is like the case of a thirsty dog. If you drive him away, he hangs out his tongue, and if you leave him, he hangs out his tongue. Such is the case of who disbelieves our signs. So what I want to know is, could you kindly explain who is the person about whom Allah is talking here?
And, Allah has not named him here, but it is said that he was Balam Baur. The name Balam Baur is quite notorious in the Muslim world. And a person named Balam Baur is supposed to have been considered a wali, a saint, by people of his time for a while. Then he was put to trial by God, and he left Allah for the sake of Satan and turned to the worldly of things and chose materialism to religion. This is what the Holy Quran refers to without naming some such a person. And when Allah does not want to name anybody, among other things, it may mean that this is just an illustration which would apply to many such situations in everyday life. So whoever falls into the category of this description would be in fact addressed by this verse. So it's a great warning.
This can apply to Abu Jahl as well.
Yeah. Yes, please.
This can apply to Abu Jahl as well.
Anyone, I have told you, मैंने कहा इसके विषांदर्य बने हैं कोई चीज़ ही है, it is not green tea, white green tea. Some medicine has been added. All right, leave it.
How can a person who has seen signs of Allah suddenly becomes like Satan?
How can he?
Yes.
I don't know.
So this I'm asking because
I believe Allah has told us.
Hazrat Masih Maud has written in his book, जब तक इंसान की फितरत में सादत और मुनासबत पैदा ना हो, ईमान पैदा नहीं होगा. So once he has achieved that status of having iman, and ayat.
What do you mean? What do you understand by the verse وَمَنْ يَرْتَدَّ مِنْكُمْ عَنْ دِينِهِ? The Holy Quran speaks of iqtidar, that is renegation, turning away from one's religion, changing one's religion, so oftenly, and warns us against this. Do not turn your back to Islam once you have accepted it. So who are those people? If they had never accepted it in the beginning, then Allah shouldn't have addressed them to be once believers who are no longer believers.
Sir, I have observed in connection with Tariq Jadid, a list is prepared of those people who contribute over and above a certain limit to be presented to Huzur for prayer.
Saki sahab kithe gaya, our interpreter? Acha kya hai? Yes, please, could you kindly continue, please? Have you asked your question, or is there a part of it left? I'm asking the lady who just asked me a question, whether you have finished or a part of the question yet remains. No answer? Mubarak, you are playing tricks with the system. Huh?
No, she stopped asking.
Or the system has stopped working perhaps. Because if she is listening to me, she would naturally answer me.
I think she stopped asking.
Huh? She stopped asking as well.
The system is alright.
Huh?
The system is alright.
The system is alright? The ladies are listening to my voice, they're hearing it clearly? You think so?
Last night you were hearing your voice, but they were not able to convey their voice to you.
But now it has gone the other way around, I suppose. Because nobody is responding to what I'm
I
saying.
suspect, sir, the same thing has happened now. They probably
The other way around, yes, exactly. So Mubarak, find out. So the question, what was the question? Do you understand?
Yes, I understood that she said that I understand that lists are being prepared about those people who are paying contribution of Tahir Archive above certain limits to be presented to Huzur for special prayers. I think she is referring to Mujahideen Safi Awwal and Safi Dom.
I don't know anything about it. You know.
Yes, there is instruction from Tahir Archive that the people who are paying more than £100
Yes.
and £200, they should be categorized as Mujahideen Safi Awwal and Dom.
Yes.
And then it is staged.
Yes, it is. You are right there. This system does exist, but it doesn't mean much in reality.
Yeah, just a sort of encouragement.
Just a way of getting more money from Jamaat. But personally, I am not in favor of such things, because this is no criterion for anything. Because some people are rich and some are poor. And if a poor person can only pay £50, that would be even greater perhaps in the eyes of Allah than a very rich man who pays £10,000. It's all a comparative thing. Allah knows best who has offered money with what noble sentiments and with what pure devotion. So He is the judge. So these things do not mean anything to me whatsoever. Only they mean something to Tehreek-e-Jadid's department, which wants to improve her standing as compared to the previous year. And they think by doing this, they would increase the total amount of total collection. So that does not throw any reflection on such people either who participate in this scheme, because the bait given to them is a pious bait anyway. They tell them that if you reach this standard, a list will be presented to Khalifatul Masih with a special request for prayer. So, of course that list is prepared, is sent to me. But it doesn't mean that it makes me binding upon me to pray for them only. Because I know many poor people who are very, very zealous and very dedicated to Allah, who are not in that list. So it's a misconception on the part of Tahir or any other animal if they think that I take special consideration with that list alone and forget those unnamed people. So my system of prayer is different. I pray to Allah in the order in which Allah knows who is first and who is second and who is third. But perhaps I shouldn't have disclosed this. But I still pass through the names and that I know who is who, and it helps me to judge them in between themselves. Yes, please, Bari Sahib.
Huzur in Huzur's book, Mazhab ke Naam Par Khoon, Huzur has mentioned that at the time of victory, after enduring extreme hardship, all the prophets completely forgave their enemies.
No, I never said that. All the prophets completely forgave their enemies. It's impossible.
But most prophets, they forgave their enemies.
Everything.
Not everything.
Not even Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam did that.
Like at the Fatah Makkah, La Tasriba alaykum al-yawm, Huzur forgave.
I must have failed to express myself totally. If that is what you understood.
No. So my question was that does this mean that on the day of judgment, because Allah is Rahman and Rahim,
because your foundation is wrong, so the prayer is
so Allah will not forgive you?
I don't say that. Allah says no. Allah says some I will not forgive. So this is a fact. This is a statement of the Holy Quran. No conjectures in this. So because prophets are after Allah, after their beloved God, so they also do not forgive some people, some crimes. Yes, please. Yes. Sakisa, where have you been hiding? We needed you for a while. Any question?
Sorry, I was a bit late. Sorry.
After you heard us, your name was taken, then you can rush to this.
I was just entering the hall when I heard my name. So
All right, please.
Assalamu alaikum. In the
Introduce yourself first, like.
well, I've been introducing myself, so this time I thought that for no, but it's still there new places.
You're already.
Called Santewa from Uganda, studying in Soviet Union.
If you introduced yourself last time.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember, but there are some people who have just arrived, perhaps you would like to know you.
That's what I said.
And you are studying in USSR.
Yes.
And working with our Russian desk presently. Is that not right? Working with our Russian desk.
Yes, I'm serving the Jamaat. When I'm free,
yes.
I serve with the Jamaat.
So very good example. When he was in Russia, he wrote to us and he told us how to go about things and informed us of certain things which were happening there. And as he came here, he has devoted his time, whatever time he is left with, to assist the in charge of the Russian desk, which looks after the Russian affairs, preaching and study of Russian movements and things. And because he has a fresh experience there, so he is quite helpful with grace of Allah. Yes, please.
My question, well, I have to first of all to explain a little bit. The Encyclopedia of Islam, which was published in 1960 by Brill Late, page 301 to 303, the talk of Ahmadiyya, and the guy explaining that after the death of
the claimant of
promised Messiah, in Ahmadiyya came
question whereby the members of Ahmadiyya
got bifurcated into two movements.
yes.
Right.
And now although I'm asking what brought up the split and if those people are still living, which I believe they are, what are their activities towards Islam? And C.
In fact, you have reminded me of a very important requirement which is not perhaps fulfilled so far. The requirement is that every convert must be told about this split and a short history version of Ahmadiyya version should be given to him so that he should understand everything what happened. Like you, there will be thousands of other people who might never have heard of such a split. When they would hear it from the other side, they would be rather surprised and in some ways, sometimes, in some ways perhaps shocked that such a thing did happen in the history of Ahmadiyyat and we had not known. So it's a very essential thing that Tahrik-e-Jadid, Wakil-ul-Tabshir should note it, Saki Sahab, that this irregular course should be prepared because you are also in charge of publication department. So have small booklets prepared for the new converts from different religions. Keeping in view, you can categorize possible new converts from different parts of the world. And what essentially should be told to them, that should be defined, and small handy literature should be prepared. And it should be made a must for every Amir of the country and missionary in charge that when they come across a conversion, they should immediately apprise the new convert of all these important facts. Right? So this subject has been discussed in detail. We have so much written on this. A controversy raged for more than 2-3 decades on this subject. And the fact is that after the death of Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ, no split took place. So it is, if the encyclopedia mentions that after the death of the founder of Ahmadiyya, immediately the Jamaat got split into two, this is wrong. I am only telling you the briefest facts, the barest facts, because it's not time to go into detail. So when Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ passed away, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Awwal, Hazrat Hakim Nuruddin, was chosen unanimously the vicegerent to Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ, his Khalifa. And there was no split. During his lifetime, things were whispered as a campaign by a few people who had some authority in the Jamaat and who were considered to be the elderly people of the community. Elders, I should say, of the community. Among them was Maulvi Muhammad Ali Sahib, who later on became the chief of this dissident group. The campaign was against a particular person whom they thought would become the next caliph, who was a young boy of immature age. Yet he was gaining popularity so rapidly all around that these elders were really concerned and they did not want him to become the next caliph. So that was the second head of the Ahmadiyya community, Hazrat Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad, Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ's eldest son. He was 24 or 25 when Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Awwal died. So there are people sitting here of 25-year-old who just appear to be ordinary lads. And so he was one of the lads, you can say, at that age. Yet he had suddenly risen like a meteor to great popularity, and the reason was that he was extremely devoted to the cause of Ahmadiyyat. He did so much. He wrote beautiful articles in the papers. He traveled all over India and fought the cause of Ahmadiyyat and participated in debates. And day and night he was completely devoted and served Ahmadiyyat in a manner as people began to envy him. So the first campaign, which was a whispered campaign in the lifetime of Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Awwal, was this, that there is no need of Khilafat at all. Now they couldn't say, don't choose him the Khalifa when the Khalifa died, because it would appear very obnoxious to everybody to start discussing a Khalifa in the lifetime of another Khalifa. A Khalifa to be in the lifetime of the present Khalifa. It is not permitted in the Jamaat, and it's against the traditions. Not only that, it appears to be so indecent, and it appears to be a campaign of vilification of a certain person. So they did not do that. What they did was, they said Khilafat is not necessary at all, because Hazrat Masih Maud in his will has mentioned an anjuman, an association, who according to them should have inherited all the powers of Hazrat Masih Maud and should have after his death taken over the affairs of the Jamaat in their collective hands. And also they argue that it was the age of democracy, so no longer a Khalifa is no longer a Khalifa can be popular in the modern times, can be acceptable, I should say, in the modern times. It's a matter of the past. And they presented the concept of Khalifa like that of a dictator. And in the modern terms, when you compare democracy to dictatorship, obviously the modern minds would choose democracy to any type of dictatorship. So they started a campaign of vilification, not only against the person of whom they were afraid, but against the possible institution which they thought he would occupy. The office which was according to them to be occupied by this young boy. So when they started campaigning against this, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Awwal came to learn of this, and there were debates going on privately held here and there, and from the other side they were rebutted by an argument that if you think Khilafat is no longer an acceptable institution, then why did you choose Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Awwal for that? In the first place, if this office has become obsolete, then no need, no justification for any Khalifa whatsoever. So they said, yes, we have jointly as an anjuman handed over our rights to him temporarily. Although we inherit as the central organizational body the rights of Hazrat Masih Maud collectively, yet of volition, we have a right to give those rights temporarily to somebody else. So this Khalifa is not a Khalifa in his right. There is no Khilafat. This is a Khalifa of our making. We inherited the rights, so we chose to hand over the rights to a Khalifa, particularly because of his very special piety. So we thought it's all right, let him discharge our duties for a while. After his death, they will return to Anjuman Ahmadiyya, so it's okay. That was the stance taken by them. When this stance was related to Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Awwal, he was so angry that never in his life he was so angry, either before or after. And he called all the elders of the Jamaat to Qadian and told them to assemble in the mosque. There he said he would deliver a very special sermon on certain things. If you read that sermon, then you will understand how he thought about these people. He said, you think that Anjuman has made me Khalifa? I know it is Allah who made me Khalifa. I had no desire whatsoever for Khilafah. I did not extend my hand to it. I did not want to be a Khalifa. I was too humble to ever think of it. Yet when Allah bestowed it upon me, then I am going to guard it, to guard over it and to defend it with all my life. So if you think that you have made me Khalifa, I don't even spit on such a Khilafah. I don't care a hoot for such a thing. Why should I be a Khalifa appointed by you? I don't care. I am a Khalifa because Allah has appointed me. So those who have ever thought of such a thing, they should consider themselves out of the pale of Ahmadiyyah already. And he delivered this sermon and said so many things with such vehemence and such devotion that it is said, the reporters have reported this matter, that the people gathered in the mosque cried so loudly and so helplessly, they sobbed and cried before Allah, that it appeared as if they were being slaughtered in the mosque, all of them. And they repented and they offered, and when Hazrat Khalifatul Masih ever in the end of this sermon said, I don't consider such people Ahmadis at all. So if you want to become an Ahmadi, have your initiation repeated at my hands again. So then all of them got initiated at his hands and said that we were wrong, forgive us. And yet after a year or two, when he died, they raised this question again. This is how the split took place. This is why they revolted against the institution of Khilafat. Once they did it, they had to take another step forward. It was an essential corollary of this stance that they should have done away with the institution of prophethood, that is the subordinate prophethood to Muhammad. Why? Because Khilafat is essentially related to Nabuwat, that is prophethood. Anjumans don't leave Khalifas, nor prophets give their powers, spiritual powers or administrative powers to Anjumans. A Khilafat always follows prophethood, and prophethood always bequeaths Khilafat to others, to the future generations. So if they were caught in a dilemma, there was a contradiction in their stance. They had accepted Hazrat Masih Maud as a bona fide deputy prophet, Ummati prophet of Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So had he been a prophet, they thought, then Khilafat was a natural corollary. It had to follow. So they had to make a volte-face on this issue as well. So they said, Hazrat Masih Maud only mentioned metaphorically that he was a prophet, but he never was. He never claimed in real sense of the word. So the debate raged between the two groups. One who thought Hazrat Masih Maud was a prophet of Allah in the sense that he was raised by Allah himself. Allah spoke to him. Allah gave him a commission to perform. So he was a prophet. But because he did not bring a new law, because he was entirely subordinate to the law of the Holy Quran and the word of Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, so he was a deputy prophet. This was the stance taken by one group. And because he was a prophet, so he left the institution of Khilafat behind him. Allah ordained it so, not that he mentioned it so many words, but Allah so ordained it. And against their argument that it was Anjuman who inherited Hazrat Masih Maud-e-Islam's office, this second group said Anjuman was made in the lifetime of Hazrat Masih Maud-e-Islam. And all the powers which Anjuman contained in the lifetime of Hazrat Masih Maud-e-Islam. So had Hazrat Masih Maud-e-Islam retired, resigned from his office, or there was a duplicity. Two parallel paths were being run, one held by the Anjuman and the other by Hazrat Masih Maud-e-Islam. They had no leg to stand upon. Yet, because they were elders, older in age, had a larger influence in many regions of Ahmadiyyat, and they controlled the affairs of the community in so many ways that even the finances were entirely in their hands. So when the split came to the surface, immediately after the death of Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Awwal, then suddenly they realized that despite everything, a very great majority of the people present opted for Khilafat and rushed madly to be initiated at the hands of Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Sani. That young boy who they considered was just nothing. So that made them quit Qadian, because the majority of the people present in Qadian followed Khilafat, chose Khilafat rather than an Anjuman. But as they quit, they took everything with them. The notes of the Holy Quran which were prepared during the lifetime of Hazrat Masih Maud-e-Islam and Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Awwal, all the important documents, and the coffers of the Jamaat were left empty. Not entirely empty, of course, because they, in boasting, wrote an article after they went to Lahore and established their office there, the center there, that we'll see how long Qadian can continue with this. We have left only 6 annas in the coffers of the Jamaat. All the money is with us. They said majority of the people, well, those present were of course opted for Khilafat, they chose Khilafat. But they claim that the majority of the following all over India and the rest of the world belongs to us. We command the majority. So they said that after a few years, this is a published article in Paygam-e-Sulh, which is the official organ of Jamaat Lahore. They said, we'll see how long this survived. Hardly a few years, they said. And after that, nobody would know any Ahmadiyyat in Qadian. This is what would happen to Qadian, it would be abandoned entirely. This was the extent of their hatred for the second caliph of Ahmadiyya. And they claim majority is on our democracy is on our side, and we have shed that one particular point which is the source of all hatred directed against Ahmadiyya, that is the claim of Nabuwwat, the claim of prophethood. So they said we have got rid of one nuisance, one bad point, and we have gained another good positive value, that is we are champions of democracy as against dictatorship. So both the modern trends of humanity, of human beings are with us, and the trends of the Orthodox Muslims are also with us, because they have rejected the concept of continuity of prophethood in any form. So they started with these advantages. If their claims were right, they started with the advantage of having all the finances to themselves. If their claims were right, they started with the advantage of a much larger following outside Qadian. And of course they were right in the second 2 points. The age was that of democracy and not of one-man rule. So the modern trends were favoring them. They were traveling along the waves, not against them, along the flow. As far as the drawback of according to them, the drawback of claim of prophethood was concerned, they had got rid of that drawback as well. No disadvantage to them anymore. They could immediately become popular among the Muslim masses by telling them, no prophethood. So why not? What is the big objection now? With all these advantages, during the last about 90 years or so, what has happened? You know what has happened? These advantages have worked totally against them, entirely, to establish the fact that religious communities prosper with the help of Allah, not by such worldly advantages. If you had put these facts into a non-religious computer, which does not bring into account the concept of God and his interference in the affairs of the world, in the affairs of human beings, then the result should be, this group should prosper. They are modern in thoughts, in organization. They are less much less hated, because they have dropped the idea of Nubuwwat altogether. So even if they were hated, they were much less hated as compared to the other group. They could gain much rapid popularity among the Muslims with the idea of Nubuwwat having been dropped entirely. They could gain much more popularity among other religions of the world in the modern age, because they believe not in Khilafat but in organizational control, joint control of committees and so on. So this is how the race started. What should have been the result of that computer? They should win, and the other party, poor obsolete party, should have been wiped out. Yet the decree of Allah got unfolded completely differently. The claim, if that was right, I don't agree that that was right, but if that was right, they enjoyed 90% popularity among the then existing Jamaat. But if that is an exaggerated claim, as I believe it is, let's call it 50-50. Or even less, let's call it 30-17 our favor and to their disadvantage. So we started the race with 70 against 30, let's call it. And you know what is the position today? Against 1,000 Ahmadis, they are one. And that is a liberal estimate on my part. If you want to know what happened to them with these popular ideas, you should go to see their Jalsa Salana, their annual gathering in Lahore. And compare that annual gathering, not with our annual gathering, because there is no comparison. Not with the annual gathering of Jamaat Lahore either, because there is no comparison. Compare their annual gathering of the entire world organization with one Jummah held in any mosque, Ahmadiyya mosque in Lahore. And you will be surprised to observe that the gathering at every Jummah, which is held in so many centers in Lahore, is larger than their annual gathering of the entire world. What happened to those advantageous ideas and popular ideas and all that? Allah wanted to establish that it is me, Allah alone, who sees to it that his people become victorious. They don't become victorious by following popular movements and things and worldly affairs. Against the will of Allah, no will can be imposed. And when Allah so desires, against the will of people, Allah's will is imposed. However bitter the idea of Nubuwwat may have been, those who held this idea have become victorious over those who had run away from this idea. So this is in nutshell the reason of the split and the result of the split. And this is perhaps what you never knew before, unless you had read the mention of it in encyclopedia. Is that correct?
Excuse me?
This you had never known before.
No, I got it from, well, I got the question first. I was asked the question, then I carried out the research.
Thank you for pointing out.
I followed on the
Yes.
means of
Now I have already instructed, you know, a small pamphlet should be written on the lines in which I have answered this question, documented of course, because by suddenly answering a question at random you don't remember all the references, etc. So a very small article which could be read in 20 minutes, let's say, or 15 minutes, should be written just giving the various facts in the same order as I have mentioned them, for the newcomers of course.
Is there a point
And the new generations also. They also need to be educated. Yes, please.
A point of clarification to him who is going to write the pamphlet, that I have to sing that just to give him the encyclopedia number and when it was published, so that can consult it and read through it, then to also help to tackle the question.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So when are you proposing to leave for Leningrad, is it?
Yeah.
It's planned?
Inshallah tomorrow. 9
Inshallah tomorrow. Allah bless you and be with you. Help you. Yes, please. Go ahead.
This is in connection with the earlier question about Tahrik Jadid. Now the lady has sent the question in writing.
Yes, please.
She has written that I have observed in connection with Tahrik Jadid that a list is prepared of those people who contribute over and above a certain limit to be presented to Huzur for prayer. She has written, Huzur, I feel every person is entitled to this privilege as sacrifice is a relative phenomenon.
I have already answered this question in the same spirit. I fully agree with that lady. But that list is also of some advantage to the community collectively, because it reminds people, and some people who can just reach that level just for the sake of drawing my particular attention to them in prayer, of course, they reach out, extend themselves to reach out that minimum threshold. So there is no harm. It has been continuing for some time traditionally. I will not discontinue this tradition. But as far as my personal attitude is concerned, I have already explained.
There is another question as well. Somebody has sent the question. In history, it is often minority who recognize the truth and follow the path of their prophet in the beginning.
Yes.
If the minority are more often right, why do you take majority opinion when making decisions in Jamaat?
Very interesting. You know, the majority of that minority is always right. This is what has been disclosed to us by Ahmad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This fact she left out from her computation. When a minority is right, it does not mean that a minority of that minority is always right. There is a fallacy in the question. Yes, please.
If I may be permitted to narrate a latifa in connection with the split that you have just discussed with you.
Yes.
When Chaudhry Zafar Khan Sahab, may Allah be pleased with him, was in England when Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Anwar was very sick. At that time, Khaja Kamaluddin Sahab was also in London, not as a representative.
When he was conjecturing about who should be the next Khalifa and who should not be. Is that the particular incident?
Yes, and the handicaps that
please continue, yes. Very interesting incident, yes.
This Huzur, he said,
episode.
he argued the same as some of the others, like Maulana Muhammad Ali Sahib and others, that they should not be Khalifa. And one argument that he gave was that he could not find a suitable person.
No, not like this. Yes, continue, please, let me see.
He said he could not find a suitable person who had the qualities really to lead the community.
That's right.
Then he started with Maulana Muhammad Ali
That's
Sahib.
correct, yes.
Then Maulana Saduddin Sahib.
And how did he describe them? What were the shortcomings according to him which they possessed and which should not, which disqualify them from the office of Khilafat?
Well, in some, he said they were very soft and rather weak in administration.
Yes. For instance, he said about Muhammad Ali Sahib that he is too weak.
Against some, he said,
and against Saduddin that he is too short-tempered or something.
Correct.
And then
his own defect.
His own, yes, what was that?
He said, my defect is that I want to
yes. And then so he said, I am also a great folly. I can't become the Khalifa because, I always say the truth. Can't help it. And Zahullah Khan Sahib says that unfortunately that was the only defect he did not have. And that allowed Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Sani was elected. He said Mirza Mahmud has also a defect. He is too young. So Hazrat Choice Sahib retorted that as far as the other defects are concerned, they can't be rectified. But I think the defect of age will be rectified later on. He would grow old.
So may I be permitted to ask?
I'm sorry to steal your joke.
Huzur, you narrated it much better than I did.
Yes, continue. What else?
Huzur, it's the visit of the Iranian president to Pakistan. And according to the press reports, he had an excellent reception. This puzzles me a little. The background is, as far as I can see, that the Shia community in Pakistan, after what has happened to us in the last year and a half, are very apprehensive. The President of Pakistan, on more than one occasion, was snubbed by the authorities in Tehran. The government of Pakistan is so...
Well, I know the dilemma which is bothering you.
Yes, sir.
But I know what is happening in fact. But is it the right forum to discuss this politics?
Maybe not. Maybe not.
I know, I can explain later on. Yes, please.
I have two questions. The first question is actually from two sources, and I tried to find that there was a context was different, but the question leads to the same phenomenon. The Christians, while we were discussing about Islam and so on, they asked that why is it that the Messiah which was to come had come in India while there is a greater need, according to ourselves and because the evils in the social in these Western countries, why should he be imposed upon and you people come over here and tell us the good things which the Messiah has been preaching and so on? While our culture is...
What was your answer?
Huzur, I actually took up the view that it was a universality of the...
No, you should have pointed out that the same dilemma occurred for the first time when the first Messiah came.
Yes, Huzur, I went into that as well in detail.
Judea was held in relationship to Rome in the same ratio of advancement and backwardness. And extent of crime or lack of crime, everything. And in fact, the Roman Empire stood to be a very awe-inspiring, one of the greatest empires that ever were in the world. And it covered almost half the world. And the same was the state of the British Empire at the time when the second Messiah came. And as compared to the people looking from the summit of England at what was happening in a small town in India, again this ratio was exactly the same. They were looking from their ivory tower down to some small ant-like movement happening in one far-off town village of Qadian in India. As the Roman emperors were looking at what was happening in Judea, in fact they were never told what was happening there. So were not the emperors here told what was happening in Qadian. So same things are being repeated in the same way, only the world does not take notice of these things.
Yes, I think from the Shias, they ask the same question in different contexts, that the prophets have been appearing as far as they know from the Bible and from the Holy Quran.
Well, the Holy Quran has already dealt with this question, because this is not the first time that this question is raised, or the previous one either. The Holy Quran mentions that they do this. Ahum yaqsimuna rahmat rabbi or yaqsimuna? Ahum yaqsimuna rahmat rabbi. This is the answer. That they say a prophet should have appeared from here or from there. The answer according to the Holy Quran is Ahum yaqsimuna rahmat rabbi. Would they distribute the mercy of your Lord? It doesn't say our Rabb as such. This is the most beautiful expression of the Holy Quran. That He is your Lord first. Anybody else is later. And they are going to distribute His mercy and His favors. Who are they? What are they to God? You are everything to God. So that is an argument within an argument,
The second question.
Third perhaps.
Yes, the third question is, in Tazkira, Hazrat Masih Maud had described one of the dreams where he had seen that Hazrat Fatima has allowed Hazrat Masih Maud to place his head on one of his and the Shias are actually very much almost angry about it in one sense, and to say that
in fact, yes, what happens is that the whole incident is intentionally misquoted in a depraved way to create hatred against Hazrat Masih Maud. In the first instance, this vision was mentioned in Brahim-e Ahmadiyya in detail. In the second instance, this was mentioned in another book, which was Egalatika. Because it had already been explained in detail, so when it was repeated in Egalatika Azala, it was not discussed in that much detail. So instead of going back to its origin, where everything is explained, they pick it up from the second version, where knowing that everything has already been explained, there will not be any misunderstanding. They raise hue and cry against this. Number one, it's a vision. Number two, the original vision which describes everything is this, that Hazrat Masih Maud enters a room where there is Hazrat Rasul Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Hazrat Ali radhiyallahu ta'ala anhu, Hazrat Fatima radhiyallahu ta'ala anha. Father and husband are also present of that lady. And he goes there and like a most benevolent mother, like a most loving mother, she puts her head to her knees. To her thighs are the word, Rama. Now, one thing which people forget is to visualize what was happening and how it was happening. He found himself standing. If a man is taller than a lady generally, she can't put his head down to pull it down to her thighs or knees. she always does it when a child approaches her and her head is only on the size of that, at level with her thighs. So when she embraces such a child, the head would automatically touch the thighs. So he saw himself like a child of Hazrat Fatima radhiyallahu ta'ala. And this is why the word Madre Mehraban, like is a very loving, gracious mother. She embraced him, and in that process, her head was touching the thighs in that embracing. That means in vision he saw himself like an innocent child that high. So because it is so self-explanatory, the enemies of Ahmadiyyat never refer to this incident as discussed in such detail. They pick up another place in Ghalati Ghazala where he says that once Hazrat Fatima radhiyallahu ta'ala in a vision touched his head, placed his head on her thighs. So they are corrupt-minded people, depraved people, so they think so viciously of such incident as if Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ is describing Na'uz Billah min Zalik a voluptuous experience. And they excite people against him and say that such a man who thinks Na'uz Billah min Zalik voluptuously of Hazrat Fatima Siddiq radhiyallahu ta'ala, what sort of man he is? Common ignorant people, they get excited and become violent against some of these. While the people who do this, they are the real criminals. Even to think of such a thing regarding a vision about such a pious, and in fact she is called Khatun-e-Jannah, the first lady of Jannah. How could they do such thing to her? To speak in such terms about her and the vision of Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ, unless they had lost all sense of decency. This is what they have done. Right? Bashir sir, I'm sorry, the time is over. 15 minutes past the time when it was finished. The meeting should have been finished. Should have finished. So, is it a very, very urgent question? Compelling one? Would it in any way influence your sleep if you don't ask this question? Fine? Yes, it will. Huh?
I'll ask next time.
Okay. So you can ask one question also. I take pity on you, please come. Everybody I think would agree with me that if you let him go without asking a question, it would be cruelty to him. Huh? Yes, please.
I shall be most grateful if Hazur most kindly advise us whether a prophet is always born a prophet and not made a prophet through his good deeds. If this is true, then Hazur most kindly explain the following surah in this connection, from which it seems that a prophet is also made through his good deeds, contrary to the above understanding of the being born a prophet. This is mentioned in the Holy Quran, Surah Al-Nisa, Ruku 9. And whoso obeys Allah Ta'ala and the Messenger shall be among those whom Allah Ta'ala has bestowed His blessings. The prophets, the truthful, the martyrs and the righteous, and an excellent company are they. The second part I will ask.
I think it will take a long time to discuss the first part alone. So why to switch over to the second one now? Next time maybe. I think we better deal with the whole question next time, inshallah. Right? Because it requires a longish answer. Not very long, but still, there should be reasonable time for this. And there also again is a second part, as you tell us. Yes, I know. So instead of asking you now, I would permit you, Mr.
Ali.
You wanted to ask a question?
No, it's asking a question as well. I get this.
Make an observation, please.
Yes. Assalamu alaikum. Since this is my last time to meet my brothers, together with my brothers.
During this visit, sir?
Yeah. I would like first of all to say thank you very much to you, Huzur, for the prayers that you have been offering for me. And by the grace of Allah, I have completed my studies. And my brothers, especially in UK, they have helped me quite a lot, morally, and they have been praying for me. And I have enjoyed their hospitality, really. And as you mentioned earlier on, they tried to involve me in various activities.
When you return home, kindly convey our best regards to whole of Tanzania on our behalf. And particularly to Ahmadis and their blessings, we do wish well of them all. And I also congratulate you on behalf of all on your excellent thesis, which you showed me, and I was really impressed. It was a beautiful thesis. Allah bless you, and may you be fully rewarded by that great effort.
So I would request you all, Huzur and the rest of you,
Inshallah will be.
to pray for me and my friend.
On the promise that when you return home, you will become a prominent Da'i Allah, one of the most successful preachers in Iran. And you will also infuse others with this spirit. Is that a promise? Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.